Can I see the hands of all those in the audience who have suffered separation, loss, and grief? Wow, that is something. And you know, what I'm going to talk about today, becoming a resilient Black woman, is a human condition. It is something that we cannot escape. So I want you to imagine and to visualize me as a heavily pregnant 19-year-old woman. Don't say that. As a heavily pregnant 19-year-old woman. My husband and I are about to have our first baby. We are happy. And he is the second Black police officer in the Metropolitan Police. We have a lot to look forward to. It is his first night in a police car, and he returned home very excited and said to me, "Lynn, come and see me at the window." I watched him as he drove out of the gates of the police accommodation where we lived. It was in the stillness of the night when I heard a loud rap on the door. I stumbled and I walked to the door, and there I saw the foreboding shadow of two police officers. My heart skipped a beat. They said, "Mrs. Ince, your husband has been in an accident and we need you to come with us." On the way to the hospital, I was gripped with fear. I was frantic. I was worried. I was wondering what had happened to him. When I arrived at the hospital, I was approached by a surgeon in blood-stained uniforms, and he said, "Mrs. Ince, I am sorry, but your husband died before he arrived at the hospital." I was instantly caught up in a whirlwind of grief. I fell to the floor in unconsciousness. I had lost everything. I was shattered. I then gave birth to my son 9 days after my husband had died. It was my 20th birthday. And so I gave birth to him in pain and in grief. I was holding death and life in my hands. I had nothing. I had no accommodation. I was homeless. I had nothing. So I had to return to my mother as a broken, absolutely broken woman. As a child, I had seen how my mother was a resilient woman. She had struggled to raise 6 children after the death of my father. It was a sudden death. She uprooted in midlife, leaving Barbados to come to this country to find a new way for her children. She gave up everything. Little did I know that what I had observed in her, I would have to adopt, emulate, if I wanted, that is, to become resilient. In order to turn around this picture, I took 3 strategies, and these 3 strategies were very, very important in helping me to grow and to develop. So first of all, I developed the spirit of audacity. And the spirit of audacity is a fighting spirit. It is a spirit of braveness. It is a spirit that dares to win. The spirit of audacity is a spirit of courage when you feel as though your knees are buckling and you are going to collapse. That was what I went through. While my son was growing, my little Michael, I called him Mike, he was growing, he was developing, I was fighting for compensation for the death of my husband. It was a battle that took 3 long years, but I won, and it became my first victory. I wasn't fighting as a widow or a woman, but I was fighting as a black woman because I had been denied compensation. It would take me some time to recover and to grow out of adversity, but it was what I intended to do. The spirit of audacity would not allow me to be silent or to give up, but to fight with perseverance. In my heart of hearts, I knew that I had to turn around my circumstances. That is the essence of resilience. My second strategy was to step up to the plate. Stepping up to the plate, I saw discouragement, I saw low self-esteem, and I saw fear, and I prayed hard to overcome the fear. The fear is what was hanging over my head like an albatross, but I refused to sink into despair, despondency. Fast forward, my son is now 11 years old. I recognize that he is a gifted child. He is a gift. He was born on my birthday, after all. So, he is a gift. But I now have to work with him. I now have to develop him. This was a burden, an onerous burden that rested on my shoulders. And so I made a momentous decision, because it called for that. I made a momentous decision to send him to our church boarding school for 5 days during the week, returning home at the weekend. By this time, I had qualified, and remember, it is 11 years, but I had qualified as a social worker. And so I did not want to be separated from him, but I gave him wings and I allowed him to fly. He declared that he wanted to become a doctor. And so at the end of his studies, he became a successful doctor. But what about me? Where was I in all of this? I had made many achievements in this time. By now, I had achieved an MPhil in social work. I had achieved a doctorate. I became a life coach. I am all about helping people, growing people, developing people. And so, with those things, when I became a doctor, he held my hand up and he said, "Mom, you are the real doctor." We enjoyed that moment. It was a special moment. Third, I reclaimed and reframed my experience. So now, in reclaiming my experience, I reclaimed who I was. I was growing, I was developing. I reclaimed my faith. And my faith became the narrative now that was driving strength over weakness. My strength gave me hope and the will to survive. I now began to trust in my God, and He allowed me to become successful. In reframing, I decided that I wanted to become different. And being different often meant that I had to stand alone, but I stood up for what I believed in. There were times when people thought that there were places I couldn't go, but I didn't look at the mountain, but I thought about how I could climb it. I didn't look at the giant, but how I could conquer it. The more we look at mountains and giants, the more we pale into insignificance. I decided then to remain a widow, to be independent and remain a widow for 47 years until 5 years ago when I was remarried to Hubert for a second time. Reframing the picture was what helped me to contain my thought processes. It helped me to see the world through different lenses. I moved from being and thinking that I was of no effect to thinking that I could achieve, that I could do things. I moved from self-blame and self-pity to a new story. I wouldn't have done all of this without the support of my family, because they stood with me shoulder to shoulder. And so I say to you today that support is what helps a person to become resilient. They stood with me. And as a result of that, I was able to rebuild the broken and shattered pieces of my life. In summary then, resilience gives us that fighting spirit. We are able to step up to any plate. We can reclaim, reframe, rebuild our experiences. We do not have to be defeated by the things that happen to us, because it is not where we are coming from that defines us, but where we are going to on our journey. Today, that 20-year-old woman stands before you as one who dared to turn adversity into a powerful and enduring force for good. Dare to believe that you can do it too.